So before I break down the whole build system really simply, I just wanted to show a side-by-side comparison for firing stability, movement stability, and sway. So the reason for the first two is because these are the most mysterious, I would say. Long story short, if you had a 0.0 firing stability multiplier, there would be 0 additional bounce. Movement stability is hard to compare. You get recoil smoothing and all those additional mechanics that every FPS has, but I do believe that the recoil pattern is affected no matter what. For sway and aiming stability, most of you know what this is. If you have a really bad multiplier, your scope is going to move around town. But this affects you no matter what gun you're using, no matter what sight, even if you're using a 1x like me. A lot of people like to bind it so that when you aim down sights it automatically holds breath, which is great for operations. My only issue with this is I'm going to run out of breath and I'm going to get hit with that penalty for having no breath, so it's going to just destroy whatever I have going. So it really depends on the weapon. But initially holding breath is always going to be a benefit. Muzzle velocity is pretty simple. The more you have, the easier it is. It's going to hit targets at farther ranges. It's not going to affect how many bullets you shoot, but how fast it travels. Therefore, if you have super high muzzle velocity, you don't have to lead your shots nearly as far at ranged targets. It makes it feel more hit scan. So the only thing we need to take from the effects chart is things that aren't in the details. For example, control and accuracy, those are going to show you exactly what they're affecting here. You don't have to worry about that. But this thing gets turned into an automatic shotgun. What the fuck? Also, I'm glad I used this as an example because aiming spread for shotguns, I don't believe they show you this. They only show you the general hip fire. There's no chart to show you the pellet spread. It only tells you in the effects. Sometimes they do you like that, and I really don't like going off of just these 2 bars, but it is what it is. And you can just test this in the firing range on the wall. This is the most important part though. If you look at details here, you're not actually seeing anything. It only shows you 1.0, I don't know why, but you have to actually go to loadouts, go to control, and then you can see your actual current stats. Then from there, when you put a new piece on, you can get an idea. Doesn't happen for all stats, it just happens for things like control and stability. Huge tip, if you like a build, just save it and then compare to your current modifications. When you add additional things, then you can just go back and forth and hit the details and then compare and actually see what's an overall better combo. Alright, so let's take a look at the Season 9 SMG45 build. We've cut off 41% of the recoil, okay? So that's just the easiest way to determine. We have 59% of the recoil left of the base pattern. The firing stability. So we've taken a look at what it looks like. It's basically the additional bounce. Very apparent with the AKM. In the diagram on the right, it's only going to show us strictly the recoil pattern effects, okay? One thing to take away from firing stability, I need to tell you guys this, okay? These pieces specifically, first of all, before I get ahead of myself, the overall firing stability, you're going to see it get added to the stat correctly. But this is why they should split this just like they split these. Because when you get into secret order, anything that does one side, vertical or horizontal, it's not going to show you what it's doing anymore, okay? It's getting added horizontally. It's just not telling you. So that's why pieces like this, the multi-caliber suppressor, they feel so goddamn good, but they statistically don't make any sense. This piece actually does, because it adds the actual horizontal on top of it. See this negative vertical control? Shows you exactly how much you're losing. It's not a mystery anymore. Firing camera stability. Oh boy. Alright, so I have no way to isolate these stats without making it biased. What I mean is, I basically have different stats on this gun. Like, I want to compare the camera stability on this prism piece to my normal build. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show it. My mouse is charging right now, so I can't really aim. That's not the point, we're just taking a look. I believe it's more of the overall actual, like, first-person view. But you really need to test these things, because things like the hipfire calibration don't exactly fucking mean hipfire aim speed, okay? So we always have to test it. The best way to go over the damage fall-off multiplier is to simply go to the range, and just go to these. Then you can mess with this exactly how far you want. You can see the fall-off. Make it 800 HP, make it Gibraltar, and you can even do it with old Jim over here. Thanks, pal. I'm not sure why, but I'm not allowed to change this anymore. Scope magnification adapts automatically. I have it on, and I would highly recommend you use it. If you know why this happens, please let me know in the comments so other people can actually use this. This feels amazing. It goes hand in hand with the 1.0 zoom. Use whatever feels best. 1.25 has the advantage of actually being able to see people at range. That's the reason I like it though. Less visual recoil, feels way smoother up close in those fights where it's just out of hipfire range. And then the eye relief sets it so that we're closer to the sight. So we see that. This is the same 1.0 zoom, but now we see all that. So these are all tied to your details. You don't have to relearn what everything does. Firing stability, we take a look, 0.8, let's see the ADS movement speed as well, it's 2.69. So the multiplier goes up by 7%, and we gain a whole bunch of movement speed. The muzzle velocity you can find here, you can see a change for the ADS speed. You'll see the ADS speed in your handling stats, and then you'll see the muzzle velocity drop. The foregrip, we know what these three are, stability when moving. We're also aware, just to be sure though, it's going to affect this stat right here. It's going to change that. You would think hipfire aim speed would change your sprint to fire delay. Let's take a look, okay? 156, 293. Let's see what changes. Just the ADS speed, okay? This is tied to the stability when moving once again. Last but not least, for the stock, we have aiming stability while breathing. It's a long sentence for sway. Could just say sway. That's what's going to affect. You can see this change. The reason I always go for control over sway is because it's going to be good no matter what if your stability is high enough. Same thing for movement stability. That's why I'm able to use these calibrations for ADS speed and movement speed instead. For example, that's why it's so easy to go for control when it's tied to the aiming stability while breathing calibration. Let's pull this bad boy out. This is the only time I would go for aiming stability over control, because we're shooting one shot and can't even control it in between. For the shotties you can spam, you do want the control because it's actually going to be affected. But guns like this, guns like the AWM, you just want sway. You just want your shot to be perfect every time. So that's why we have it set to that. Also for shotguns, I want to mention, if you press your zoom button, this is also why I love lasers. It's always going to be this speed no matter what, so you can just really... That was not a good example. You can really just rely on that, and then max out your muzzle velocity, make sure everything's maxed out. You can do that for all guns. The only thing I recommend you make sure is high enough is your movement speed. You cannot neglect the movement speed when you go for a laser build, okay? Now I want to cover some min-maxing, alright? So, long story short, if you move it a few notches, sometimes the one stat won't change, okay? So let's set this all the way to ADS speed. Minimum muzzle velocity, 576. And we got 316. Basically, I would set it a few over, go back and forth, and check to see if it changed. Set it to minus 9.4, gained a tiny bit of muzzle velocity, and we didn't change the ADS speed whatsoever. This is the easiest one to mess with. Firing stability, all of them are able to be min-maxed, and you only want to do this when you're finished a build, okay? I was even able to do it back here, to the sway. I gained a tiny bit of sway, 0.1, without changing the control pattern at all. So 8.9, 3.9, 5.7. Since the sway is so bad, it was able to be improved. So like I said, just save it. Even the calibrations, make sure that's all finished up, because if you change something on your build, everything to do with, like, say if you put more stability on, those stability min-maxes might have to be changed. So the base of the build, the barrel, A lot of guns, when it comes to this transcendent long barrel, have much more panel capability. And what I mean by that is, you won't be allowed to pick these panels for a lot of guns, on the right and left rail for example, but for the AKM, on this barrel, you can. So if you were looking for an accuracy barrel, this gives you +4 apiece. If you actually want to compare this to the other accuracy barrels, you want to max this out, and then take a look at the other barrels and see the stat difference. It's going to be between this or the maximum range with the advanced recoil system. I like the recoil pattern either way. I actually like the original one, but this bad boy has much better stats than the other long range. The regular one that came out has much less handling. This is why it's beneficial to have 2 builds. This is good for comparing the accuracy, but the control, if your calibrations and stuff are set up, it's going to make it biased if you look at the details, because this is always cranked out and this is going to be the default calibrations. That's why I always go back to the saved build comparison point. So let's talk about these Spec Op barrels. The ones that give you insane hipfire, and it's basically the CSGO build. Accuracy is going to help. It's going to help with this when you're actually moving, but I would actually rather go for control. Or, you know, both. Because with this vertical piece, it's still helping even from the hip. It helps a lot. So for the Spec Ops barrels, I would max out every calibration to the right, just because you don't need speed whatsoever. You don't need ADS movement speed, you don't have to worry about that. You're good to go. You want to just set them all to the right, and you'll just gain all the benefits. Onto the muzzle, I just want to give a quick shout out to this piece right here. You just have no idea how good it is until you click the details. You see +6 control. It's just not affecting it the way it normally does, okay? You get no recoil benefits out of this, but this improves your firing stability by 25% for 0 handling loss. This is like a piece made for the AKs, because now you can actually fit everything else on. So that's why I love this piece. The FFC double port is just absolutely stacked. Stat to handling ratio is just off the charts, okay? And the camera stability, this is huge to pair with the 60 round magazine that gives you the camera stability loss. I know the AKs don't have it, my bad. So that's why usually, if I'm going with a suppressor, I want one that gives me that range benefit. That's the main reason I would go with a suppressor. All you have to do to replace a piece like the DTK is rearrange your build. We're going to have to find a good spot for firing stability. So in this case, I'll just get straight to the point. I like the AK-19 stock because it's pretty good on handling. Not as good of a piece as the FFC, but it's a really good alternative. And then from there, I would rearrange, check my stats, recalibrate, and then test it out in the firing range, and then I shoot the wall. I've talked about this briefly, but yeah, this is going to feel way better than what we see in the stats because of these 2 stats right here. Same thing with the Russian suppressor. This doesn't give you any range, but it's really good for the stabilities. So let's just take a look. It says it's adding 0.1, but that's overall. That's on top of the horizontal boost, and then it just gives you overall horizontal control. Onto the foregrip, I went with just the K1. Didn't feel the need for the Secret Order bevel foregrip. This was just out of feel. I really do just test the stuff on the walls. And basically, it's all about those first few shots for me. Like, if it zigzags too hard, then I'm just not a fan. I would say this is actually the first choice you make. This is why I want more than 5 slots, because I would like at least 10. I love making builds, and I like at least 1 for each magazine. At least. So, that's pretty much the first choice. I'm not going to tell you which one to pick. That's the point of the game, is to have fun and to build around pretty much your magazine, because that's going to be, you know, that's going to determine how you build it. This and the barrel. The only thing I would add is, usually I sacrifice the muzzle velocity when I'm going for a drum mag, for example. Usually it's for medium close range anyways, so it works out. And then when we're not losing -19 handling, that's when I can actually get my velocity. Just an example. Honestly, there's not really much to cover here. I like these 3 pieces. I've used the RK3, whatever fits best. If I need control, then I'm going with Scorpio. I usually don't have this option. Usually they're all tied for extra control. Just keep in mind the heavy tower grip has 2 pieces. If I don't need the accuracy, I'll usually use the skeleton just to be able to fit, and I'll just calibrate it for even more speed. In this case, I fit this thing on, okay? This piece is the perfect balance because if you're looking for close to medium range, especially as a Tempest, okay? Rolling into people, you need to just be able to rely on the accuracy. I would just love to go with the end cap, but I actually want to be able to see what I'm shooting at. And yes, you could make this work. I would much rather prefer the QR. So let's talk about the risers. I usually avoid these unless I'm really happy with the firing stability. So you're going to lose 0.43 for each of these 2 pieces. But a good reason to do it is to add the laser to the multi-purpose. And then you could use this for something like that. So you really wanted stability. Or if you just want to improve the pattern. Specifically the pattern. This may help with the firing stability. You have to check each piece. And here's an example. I did it on my rapid fire CI-19 because it is one of the hardest builds to make in the whole game. I needed maximum speed, okay? So I went with all the handling pieces. I needed everything, okay? And since I went with double horizontal firing stability, I was able to, you know, get away with it a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if I get rid of it in the future. We'll see. I'll try my best to find a better combination. So for sights, pretty much everything we've gone over is going to be in the effects, it's going to be in the stability handling. The 3.0 sights and below, you don't have to worry about. We're not getting glint. We're not giving away the position. That's why I love the viewpoint, it's just another benefit. And then this 2 times is also perfect. It gives you a little bit of stability for the sight at least. So yeah, that's why I usually go with the micro sight riser. You're getting 2 stability points for 1 handling. I love just being above the muzzle flash. If you really want the handling though, if you get used to the Cobra, this does raise it a little bit. The Cobra! That was weird. Alright, so for the hipfire deagle, max everything out. The only thing you're looking for with a hipfire build is just maximum benefits. So I would go with the maximum muzzle velocity because you can cross-map people with this. And yes, you could go for more accuracy, but I think this is much more worth it when the spread works the way it does. I really wanted to see what I could do with this because, as we can see, we're limited as fuck, alright? I can't just do the normal stuff where I just go all ADS speed. I had to actually get a little creative here. Wanted high accuracy, but I wanted a beam. And then instead of the ADS speed all the way for this, I have it set to default. Just wanted to give an example, because not every build's the same, of course. The base stats are different for every weapon as well. This is why it's just good to know what each detail means, and then it doesn't matter. There isn't just one piece you have to rely on. Except for me, I rely on the prism just because I want that camera stability. For a gun like the SR, I was able to fit this new anchor point on. And, you know, I don't use this on shit, because the handling is just abysmal. But when it comes to a gun like this, let's look at these stats. Well below 300. I'd appreciate if you guys use code RAZOR in the coin menu. Doesn't matter how you write it, capitals, whatever. Bottom left corner of the coin menu, I'd highly appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed this informative video. Not the most entertaining, but definitely a video you can take, you know, just watch it in parts. Hopefully learn almost everything about builds. You know, I'm not gonna say I know everything. Always learning new stuff, but I just wanted to teach you everything I know. Hope you enjoyed. I'm out. Peace.